Okay, let's go. So, Parshas told us, last year we had a shir about Yaakov selling the firstborn rights to Esav and how that sale was valid if it's only something that pertains to the future. We had a discussion of who the real firstborn is. We also had a shir once all about Esav and the tattoo that he had on his thigh.
Totally forgot.
Well, the problem is all on Spotify, and the problem is that last night I gave my Brochim a shir about the vampire's tattoo, we called it, and the Brochim that had heard the shir.
From you or from someone else?
No, from the Spotify.
They listened to it?
They listened to it.
That's great.
Wow.
That's great.
They learned it again?
So now,
They just listened to it. That's the problem.
You're limiting.
That's it. So we've got to be creative and find new
limiting
things.
his library.
Anyhow, so tonight's a new topic. Haven't given a share on it yet. It's an age-old question, and it's a fascinating thing. And at the end, we'll see a beautiful insight of the Rogachover.
Ooh, yeah, we haven't gotten to the rugged job in a while.
All right, well, he comes up. He comes up every so here and there. He rears his great head. Okay, so number one is the Chumash. Let's just read a little bit. So Rivkah overhears that her husband Yitzchak wants to bench Esav. Why does Yitzchak want to bench Esav? He's the firstborn. Yitzchak had big hopes for Esav. Yitzchak saw the potential Esav had, and he wanted to bless him. And Rivkah finds out, so she tells her son Yaakov, you got to dress up as Esav and bring your father the food that your father asked for. Yitzchak wanted some flesh before he benched his child. The Ramban says before one gives a bracha, a real bracha has a hashra of the Eibush on the person. The Shechina dwells on the person, Ruach HaKodesh. The Shechina only dwells on a person when they're in a good mood. Good piece of flesh. Yaakov also brings him wine.
That's the duchening one.
Yeah.
The duchen you have to be.
Right, exactly. Ba'ava, exactly. So over here, that's the Ramban says. That's why Yaakov said to Esav, "I want you to give me a full meal. That will put me in the right mood, in a pleasant mood, a happy mood, a satisfied mood, and then the Shechina can rest on me. And I can give you a bracha." Anyhow, so Yaakov is told by his mother to go copy. So Yaakov says, my father's going to feel me, I'm not as hairy as Esav, and he'll curse me. So Rivkah responds, Alai kilaloscha b'ni, the curse is going to be on me. Which, by the way, the Vort of the Vilna Gaon. What was Rivkah saying? That the curse will be on me, as if that will comfort Yaakov. And he won't suffer, rather his mother. You know, what's the pshat? So the Vilna Gaon says, Alai is a Rosh Tevis. Rivkah was telling Yaakov, there will be a curse, you will suffer. Alai kilaloscha, your curse will be alai. The ayin is Esav, you'll suffer from Esav. The lamed is Lavan, you'll suffer from Lavan. And the yud is Yosef, the pain you're going to have from Yosef being separated from you. And that's why in Parshas Miketz, when Shimon is taken into jail by Yosef, right, the brothers come back to their father and they say, Shimon was taken and you need to send Binyamin. So Yaakov says, Yosef is gone, Shimon is gone, you want to take Binyamin. Yaakov says a magical word in Parshas Miketz, Alai hoyu kulana. All of this will be on me. The Vilna Gaon said it's the same word, Alai. What Yaakov was saying is, Alai hoyu kulana. I already had the whole Alai. I already had the Esav, the Lavan. I already had the Yosef. This wasn't in the cards. The Shimon being taken captive, the Binyamin being taken. Yaakov says in Parshas Miketz, I already had the Olai. Anyhow, so the Vilna Gaon learns, but Derech Remez, what?
It's his original word.
Yeah, it's his original word, yeah. That Olai was a Rosh Tevis. Rivkah wasn't saying, I'm taking it on me. Olai was a Rosh Tevis of what your curses will actually be.
But isn't it also because he said something, so when a tzaddik says something, it has to come true a little bit, so that, wasn't there a...
There is an idea when a tzaddik gives a curse, even if it's on condition, the curse will still take effect.
Right. We have other situations.
Right. The problem is Yaakov wasn't cursing himself. He was worried that Yitzchak may curse him.
So, but you said that it will happen to you, and something happened to him.
You see, we have by Yehuda. Yehuda in Parshas Miketz, he tells his father Yaakov, give me Binyamin, I'll take him to Egypt, I will be the guarantor. If something happens, then I will be guilty for my entire life, this world and the next. Now he brought Binyamin back.
But because he
he gave himself,
bones
so
had
that,
to
right,
roll.
exactly, he suffered. So you see, when a tzaddik gives a curse, even if it's on condition, and the condition was, the condition wasn't met, so there shouldn't be a curse. Too bad. The curse takes effect in any event. But here's already a stage further. Yaakov just announcing his fear of a potential threat, a threat of a potential curse, was already enough. Anyhow, Unklus, by the way, says when Rivkah said, Alai kilaloscha, me is your curse, she said, Alai, to me it was told in a prophecy that you won't be cursed. Alai, to me it was told that kilaloscha, about your curse, that it won't happen. In fact, that's why in the Purim story, Esther tells the Yidden fast for 3 days and 3 nights. One of those nights was the night of Pesach. How could she tell everyone to abolish the mitzvah of eating matzah? So Esther said the same words. I want you not to eat, not to drink. Tsumu olai, fast on me. So they say it's the same olai as over here according to Unklus. Olai means it was told to me in a prophecy. Esther was saying, I have the right to abolish eating matzah, because I, of the Holy Spirit, was told to me in a prophecy that we need to fast. It's the same olai, the same olai.
She wasn't changing it forever. It was just
exactly,
that one time.
exactly. Anyhow, Sakoponim, fine. So Yaakov goes in, and let's see number 1. Vayomer Yitzchak Elbana. Yitzchak tells his child, Mazem miharta limtzibni. Why were you so quick to find the game, the deer? So Yaakov says, Hikra Hashem alekech, the Eibishter chanced it before me. So Yitzchak tells Yaakov, come close, let me feel you. Yitzchak feels there's something up. Are you my child Esav or not? Now, how could he not tell from Yaakov's voice? So there's a Ramban who contends it could be they had a similar voice. There's a famous medrash that they looked very similar as well. There's a medrash in Tehillim that when the medrash in Tehillim says when was Esav killed, there's different versions, but what it says over there is when Yitzchak died and Esav and Yaakov went into the Ma'aras Machpelah to bury him, so the Shvatim were outside. They didn't want to enter. They said, it's not nice to see our father Yaakov cry. No. Yehuda thinks to himself, wait a second. Esav's been waiting for this. Esav was waiting for Yitzchak to die to take vengeance against Yaakov. So Yehuda runs in, and he sees Esav about to kill his father. So he quickly killed Esav from the back. So the Medrash says, that's the act of a coward. You kill someone from the front. So the Medrash says Yehuda couldn't kill Esav face to face, because Esav looked so much like Yaakov, Yehuda couldn't bring himself to do such a thing. So they looked very similar. This has to go to another shir, if they were identical or not, because Rashi says Yaakov was formed before Esav. That's only if they were not identical twins. If they were identical, then they're formed the same time. It's the same thing that splits. What? Right, the shir last year about that, exactly, yeah. Yes, it is. We were just saying.
Red?
When he was born, Esav's skin was red, and he was hairy. Over time, the redness...
Hair was red?
The chayra not. We don't know that. And the redness, it subsided over some time. In fact, Esav didn't have a bris when he was born because of the redness. At some point, the redness subsided. Some say Esav had a bris then. Some said he didn't. He refused to. But everyone agrees he was able to because the redness had subsided. And at some point, he looked quite like Yaakov, a little more hairy maybe, but much more. So the Ramban says, could be they sounded similar. The issue is, Yaakov mentions the Eibishter's name. Yitzchak feels something is up. Yitzchak feels, who is this guy? He mentions God. So he says, come here, let me feel you. Vayigash Yaakov approached, and Pasuk Chav Beis, he approaches his father. His father feels him, right? And he feels the goat hair. And Yitzchak says the famous words, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, the hand to the hands of Esav. Now, the voice is the voice of Yaakov doesn't mean the actual voice, it means the way of manner of speech. Is the manner of Yaakov.
Well, it could mean the one you just said that sounded alike.
Right, so they have, no. So when Yitzchak said that's Yaakov's voice, it wasn't the actual voice, because that sounded like Esav. What gave it away, right, when Yitzchak said that voice is Yaakov's voice, is the manner of speech. But the hands are the hands of Esav. Now, when you read that, when you imagine the scene, it sounds like Yitzchak's not sure what's going on over here. He's blind, can't see. But then it says, V'loi hikira, he couldn't recognize him. Ki hayu yadav kidei Esav achiv, because the hands were like Esav's. Vayavacheo, so he benched him. Very strange. It's almost like he's not sure. And then something tilts his judgment. He went after the hands. What about the voice? So you could say it like this. If the voice sounded like Esav, because Esav and Yaakov were similar, and Yitzchak's just wondering, why is Esav mentioning God? I'll tell you why. He wants to elicit the greatest brachas from his father. So he wants to say the right thing, this is the time. So I think you could say that in Pshat, why Yitzchak said Taka strange, but it makes sense. Let's continue. Vayivarcheu, and he benched him. Now, what exactly this bracha is, we have no idea. Because the pasuk continues in pasuk Chav Daled. Vayomer, and then he asks again, Ato ze b'ni Esav, you are my child, Esav. Vayomer ani, he says, I am. And Rashi comments there, he doesn't say, I am Esav, he just says, I am who I am. And then it continues that Yitzchak eats the food, and then V'yitan l'cha, all the brachas.
Yeah.
So I took out that chunk over there. Then Esav comes in, right? And Yitzchak says, who was that person? Look at the next line. B'terem tov v'varchu. Who was that person that before you came, I benched him? Gam baruch yiyeh. Let that man be benched. It sounds like the moment Esav came into the room, it says Yitzchak vayecharat. He trembled. Right. When he realized something happened. But then he says, you know what, whoever it was that came in should keep the brachas. So there's a famous Rashi in number 2. Gam Baruch he should be benched, says Rashi. Shaloi Tomar, don't say, Ilule Sherdim Yaakov wouldn't have fooled his father, he wouldn't have taken the brachas. A person could say that. Therefore Hiskim, therefore Yaakov, therefore Yitzchak Dafka said, no, I agree. Ubirchoi midaito, he benched him midaitoi. That's important, Rashi will come back to it. Back to the psukim, Kishmaya Esav, and Esav hears the words of his father. Vayitzak tzaka gedoyluma, he cried a bitter and great wail. Ad ma'od. Vayoyim la'aviv. He said, Brocheini gamai, bench me as well. And Yitzchak said, your brother came b'mirma, he took your brachas. And then Esav says, Hachi kodesh, that's why his name is Yaakov, because he fooled me twice. He took my firstbornhood, and now he took my brachas.
Why is there 2 yuds and 1?
In what word?
Aviv. No, it's meant to be a vav. It's meant to be a vav, sorry. So look at number 3, another famous Rashi. He quotes in the Tanchuma. Lama chorad Yitzchak. Why did Yitzchak tremble when Esav came in? Omar, Yitzchak said, Shema avan yeshbi, maybe I have a sin. Berachti akotov, I benched the younger one before the older. V'shanisi seder ayachas, I changed the order of the ages. Hischil Esav mitzayik. Esav began to scream that Yaakov fooled me twice. So his father said, Ma asalacha, what did Yaakov do? So he said, he took my firstborn, that was number 1. So Yitzchak said, gavaldik, bekacho yisimeit, said, that's what I was afraid about. That maybe I traversed the natural order. But now that you're saying that Yaakov was really the firstborn, gam baruch yiyeh.
Made him feel better about it.
He should be benched.
He knew he did the right thing. Yeah.
Okay, so Rashi, the end of number 3, quotes again the words Gam Baruch Yiyeh. In the Chumash, those words are said well before Yaakov hears Esav's confession that he had sold the firstbornhood. Since Rashi uses those words here. Okay, so that's the story. There is a major kasha we're going to deal with. First up, I had to put in number 5. It's a Gevaldige Wort from the Sefer Pardes Yosef. He quotes it from a certain Sefer on Masechta Ksuvos. I've seen the name of other people, but the Wort's like this. We asked, it seems like Yitzchak's not sure. The voice is Yaakov, the hand is Esav, so then why was he, what pushed him over the edge to, let me give the bracha? So they say like this. Yitzchak and Esav were concerned Yaakov may come and pull off may hatch a plot over here. So Yitzchak told Esav, I can't see. I want you to come in and talk to me like Yaakov. Because if Yaakov comes in, he'll definitely talk to me like Esav. Right?
Brilliant.
So
there's games like that.
Yeah. So Rivkah, Yitzchak says, Esav, between me and you have to come in and talk to me like Yaakov. then I'll know for sure you. If Yaakov comes and he'll talk to me like Esav. Now Yaakov knew this. So Yaakov's a step ahead. So Yaakov thinks to himself, they're expecting me to come in to talk like Esav. I'm going to come in and talk like Yaakov.
Nice.
So when Yitzchak said the voice is Yaakov, the hand is Esav, Yitzchak is saying both boxes are checked. Because the voice was meant to be like Yaakov. That's what we made up. And the hand is, it's perfect. The curl is the voice of Yaakov. That was the deed we made up. Of course, the hands will feel like Esav. It's perfect. Everything's checked. Everything's checked. That's what it says in number 5.
Spectacular.
V'loi hikira, he didn't recognize him. Yeah, what's the question? The hand felt like Esav.
You didn't see that it was.
So now that the box is checked, Hakol Kol Yaakov Edem Esav.
It could still be Yaakov, though. It could still
why
be.
V'loi Hikira?
No. Everything checked out to be like Esav. The problem, because that was the deal. The problem is Yankov was a step ahead of the game. Yankov was a step ahead of the game.
No?
Who told Yaakov Rivkah, or how did he know that?
How did he know about this ploy? In number 5, they say Rivkah knew about it.
Because she used to listen in
Rivkah knew Baruch HaKodesh about this simon, and therefore she told Yankov about this ploy. All right.
Based on any psukim or?
Yeah, they based it on a few psukim. They base it in the beginning. They say, because look in number 5, the first 2 lines. It says, "V'Rivkah said El Yankov b'na Lamer." I heard your father speaking to Esav Lamer. What's all the Lamers?
Right,
Amira means soft speech. Dibur is harsh. What Rivkah was saying is, I heard your father telling Esav Lamer that he has to speak softly. I heard your father telling Esav Lamer that he has to do an Amira soft spoken. Because they're expecting if you come in, you're going to go like Esav. So when Yaakov came in and he spoke softly, Yitzchak's like, wow, that's one check of the box. Then he said, come close. When he said, come close, it wasn't because he was unsure. It's because let me check the second box. Okay. And when the hand was like Esav, he was like, perfect, 2 boxes checked. There's a few lines missing in number 5. Sorry, a little choppy. But I told it to you outside. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, so that's an interesting pshat. But the simple pshat is that Yitzchak was seemingly unsure. But then he decided, you know what, let me go ahead. So there is a big shaila we're going to deal with. But first, just a couple comments from the Chizkuni. On the left-hand side of the page, there are a number of comments from the Chizkuni. Some say it wasn't, the printers were all acting up, so on each line you have, like, the last letter is gone. In number 6, you need another copy? In number 6, it says the Chizkuni is actually the Ibn Ezra. And the Ibn Ezra says like this.
What, the Chizkuni is quoting the Ibn Ezra?
No.
Oh,
So the Chizkuni is 7, 8, 9, and 10. Number 6 was, it was all done in a rush, I apologize. But the Ibn Ezra says like this. Esav, Yitzchak asked his son Yaakov, are you my son Esav? And he says, Anoichi, I am. This is in Pasuk Yud Tes. It's actually not in the papers. The Pasuk right before the paper begins. Number 1 starts Pasuk Chov. There's a Pasuk before. Yitzchak tells Yaakov, Ha'ata, are you my son Esav? And he says, Anoichi Esav b'chayrecha. I am your firstborn Esav. So that's like, whoa, how did Yaakov pull off something like that? So the Ibn Ezra says, some say you read it like this. Anoichi misha anoichi. I am who I am. Esav is your firstborn. That's how Rashi learns. I don't have it, but that's how Rashi learns.
Meaning that he didn't lie.
He didn't lie, yes. How are we getting out of it? He says, Yitzchak says, are you my firstborn Esav? I am your firstborn Esav. We say, I am. Whoever I am. Your firstborn is Esav. Then he says, Achedim Amru, some say, Ki benachas amar anoichi, that Yaakov whispered the word anoichi, v'nasa kol, and he raised his voice, b'milas Esav b'chayrecha. Some say Yaakov said like this, anoichi, Esav b'chayrecha. So, he was clearly dividing between the two.
Right, but ostensibly, Yitzchak would have had to hear both.
He had good hearing because he couldn't see.
Right, exactly. You know what they say, if you're missing in one, the Eibush adds in the other. If one hand is shorter, the other hand is longer.
That's great.
Oh. So says the Ibn Ezra, Ve'ela divrei ruach. Both of these explanations are rubbish. Or divrei ruach, it's in the luft. It's in the luft. These are the... He says, and the Ibn Ezra says a famous thing. He says, you know what the real pshat is? Ki hanavim yishchalku lebeis chalokim. There are two types of prophets. Hacheluk ha'alef, the first type is shliach b'mitzvahs, a messenger of God to deliver commandments. V'acheluk hasheni is a prophet who tells the future. Who tells the future. And says the Ibn Ezra that those Nevi'im that are just telling the future, im yitztarchu loimer dover sheinenu kuhugan lo yazik, if they have to say something false, it's okay. If they need to say something false because there's a higher purpose, there's a reason for it, then it's justifiable. Lo yazik. Rak, but the shliach, the first guy like Moshe who's being sent to carry the Eibish's commandments, lo yitochen shikadav klal, cannot tell an untruth at all. But the prophets that are just predetermining the future, they can say something which seems to be a white lie if circumstances call for it. The Ibn Ezra quotes many examples, but Avraham, by the Akedah, Avraham tells Eliezer and Yishmael, you wait here, I'm going to go with Yitzchak, v'nishtachava, we will prostrate, v'nashuva, we will return. What was Avraham thinking? So one pshat is, it was a prophecy, but Avram thought he was shechting his son, so what was he saying? He didn't want to startle him. So Avram said something which in his understanding was taka, a white lie, because the circumstances necessitated it. So these are famous Ibn Ezra. He says, when a Navi is telling over the directions of Hashem, you can't play around at all. He has to be exact, truthful to the word of God. But someone who's stam telling over the future that Hashem showed him, he can be a little... tactical in his information if he needs be. So the Ibn Ezra is saying that, no, the Yaakov said, I am Esav, your firstborn. Don't go around the bush. He said it. He said the words, I am Esav, your firstborn. And it was justified because Yitzchak was the one in error by wanting to give the Brochos to Esav. Yaakov had to be unscrupulous. He needed the Brochos.
He was technical.
It was urgent. So the Ibn Ezra doesn't say. The Ibn Ezra says,
He said, I am Esav.
Yeah,
He
I
didn't
am
say,
Esav.
So
He
look,
would have answered, I'm your Brochos.
I legally am Esav, your firstborn.
So
I have the paper.
Yeah. We're going to see that in just a moment. The Chizkuni says that. The Chizkuni says exactly how you put it. The Ibn Ezra doesn't say that. The Ibn Ezra says, I don't need any explanations.
He's allowed to.
He's
do
allowed to do it because
Yeah.
it was urgent. If Esav would have gotten those brachas, who knows what it would have been. It was urgent. Look, that's the Ibn Ezra. Look at number 7, right underneath. This is the Chizkuni. And number 8. Anoichi Esav b'chayrecha. Says the Chizkuni, sorry, each line, the last letter is off, but we'll manage. Yesh mefarshim, some say, shalafitzoyrech shah efshel l'shanas hadibur. That for the time, for the circumstance, you're allowed to be somewhat untruthful. That's the Ibn Ezra. For example, Avraham. Avraham told Sarah, Imri li achihu. Tell them that you're my sister.
Interesting.
How do you explain that? Do we start delaying his words? He's allowed to do it. Or v'nishtacha v'nashuv aleichem. Avraham told Eliezer Yishmael, we're going to come back. Avraham intended on shechting Yitzchak. So how do you allow himself to say those words? Because he didn't want to startle Yitzchak, he had to. But look at number 8 is the next line. Dover acher, another pshat says the Chizkuni, lefi shikul hadas lo'kichishloi. That no, in simple logic there was no lie. Kach Amala, you know what Yaakov was saying? I am in the place of Esav, your firstborn, because he sold me the Bechayra. I am. Why do you want to bench Esav? Because he was the firstborn. I am now that person. I have taken the place of Esav, the Bechayra, because I am the Bechayra. So that's how he learned. So that's another pshat. It's not like the Ibn Ezra or like Rashi. Rashi says, Anoichi, I am who I am. Esav is your firstborn. Here's a bit different. I am, for all practical purposes, I am in the place.
I'm the legal entity.
Exactly. I am the...
I'm Esav LLC.
I counted.
Yeah, exactly. He right from there into there.
Okay. So The question that we want to discuss is, was Yaakov right in fooling his father? Okay, Yaakov was very afraid, highly afraid. Yaakov said, Ulai Yumosheni Avi, maybe my father will touch me. He said the word Ulai. There's many ways to say perhaps in Hebrew. And most famously, there's pen. Pen means lest, when you're worried about something negative. Ulai is when you're hoping for something. Like when Eliezer told Avram, Ulai, maybe the woman won't want to come after me.
Eli. Yeah.
And he was hinting to the fact that maybe my daughter might be a candidate for Yitzchak. Ulai is always hopeful. Pen is lest, it's negative. So why didn't Yaakov tell Rivkah? Yeah, exactly, negative, exactly. So Yaakov should have told his mother that I can't go in, pen, maybe you Mosheni Avi, lest he touch me. He said Ulai. So the Baalei Musar say that Yaakov has such a clear conscience, he wanted his father to feel him, he wanted his father to catch him out. He felt so guilty about the whole thing. He wanted his Ulai, I hope my father touches me and then I have to own up.
Classic Jew, huh?
That's Ulai. He wanted that the whole ploy should be up. So
Yaakov will be back then.
But Rivkah said, no, you go.
Good for the Jewish mother. Baruch Hashem.
So Yaakov was afraid. Rivkah said, this is what we're doing. Was it the right thing to do? And more importantly, the question is, how did it Bechlal work? Yitzchak thought he was benching Esav. He was fooled. He was doped into this. It's a mekach tois. Are the brochos even binding? They even take effect. So let's look at number 4.
Doesn't he say that it comes out here? Yeah, that's the.
We mentioned that already in Rashi. We're going to come back to that. Not so posh. So number 4 is a Medrash Rabbah this week. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, Call Oisei, what taka took Esav so long in the field that Yaakov had enough time to get his goats and this and that? The whole day Esav was tzad tzvoim, he was hunting deer, the kaiftan, and he was tying them together. Malach bo matir, Malach would come and untie it, and the deer would scatter. Oifus, Esav had birds, Masach he also had them tied together. Malach would come, Mafricham, have them fly away. So you see, the Eibishter was creating miracles that Yaakov should have enough time to get the brachas. V'chol kach lama, because it's a pasuk. V'hoin adam yakar charutz. V'hoin means the wealth of an adam yakar, of an important person. A charutz is going to come to him or needs to come to him, which means that the brachas have to go to the rightful heir, the rightful recipient. Kedei sheyava Yaakov, which is Yekadosh Oleilam, who is the preciousness of the world. V'yitol es habrachas ol nem and the brachas shemeikar olam, that already from the beginning of time, charutzas loy, they were destined for him. So this medrash makes it very clear that the Eibishter wanted this to happen. The Eibishter was helping, the Eibishter was assisting, because those brachas belonged to Yaakov. All right. However, if you look on the next page, go jump to number 14. Sorry that it's out of order. It's another Medrash Rabbah. Number 14. Kishmoya Esav, and Esav heard as Divi of the words of his father. It's a scary Medrash. Amar Rabbi Chanina, said Rabbi Chanina, Kol mishu oimer shakadosh baruch hu vatranhu, anyone who thinks that the Eibishter just forgives and forgets, doesn't hold someone accountable, yisvatran b'nei ma'oi, let his insides fall apart. Ella, rather, Ma'irich Ape, the Eibush is patient. The Eibush takes time. The Gavid delayed, only in the end he collects what's his. Because Esav's cry that he was tricked and he lost his brachas made an impression in heaven. Zorka achas hizik Yaakov le'Esav. One cry, Yaakov caused Esav to cry. As it says, Kishmoya Esav is Divrei Aviv. In this week's parasha, Vayizak Zarka, he cried out. V'heicha nifla, do you know when Yaakov was paid back? In Shushan Habira. Shrema Vayizak Zarka Gedola Humara Ad Ma'id.
It's not Ad Ma'id.
Right. So Gedola Humara. That cry that Yaakov with Mordechai gave in the Purim story, that was the result. Since Yaakov caused Esav to cry unfairly this week, therefore there was almost a Holocaust in the times of Purim, the times of Haman, And that's the Eibush was holding on to that same cry that the Yidden had to cough up that cry. Yankov, in the guise of Mordechai. So what does that show? Does that show Yaakov's wrong in taking the brachas? It shows that Esav's anguish is, the Eibush doesn't forget about that. All right, but look in number 16. It's another comment from the Medrash. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, this is a very strange Medrash. You know what happened when Yitzchak found out that Yankov had duped him? Baal Kallah, Yitzchak wanted to curse Yankov for tricking him. So Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Hizor, be careful, don't curse Yankov. Imat Mekalaloi, if you curse Yankov, L'nafshecha, you're cursing yourself. Because you just told him, you just told Yankov, whoever curses you is cursed. So Hashem tells Yitzchak, now that Esav came in and you realize Yankov took you for a ride, don't curse Yankov, although Yitzchak wanted to. If you curse him, you'll be cursing yourself, because you yourself said, or those that curse you are cursed. So that's a whole different spin on the whole story. That means that Yitzchak was fuming. He didn't
mask him. He wasn't masking to.
Right, that's what it sounds like. He wanted to curse him, and then. So go back to the first page. You see the story is Nishta Zay Pashut. There are two comments of the Chizkuni, 9 and 10. Let's have a quick look. In number 9, he says, Yesh Mefarshim, some say, that Omar Yitzchak, that when Yitzchak found out about what Yankov had done to him, Yitzchak said like this, me, I'm blind, what do you want from me? Imani to'isi, I made a mistake between Esav and Yankov, that I don't tremble for. Ainly Tambadov, it's not a wonder. Ko Einai, I'm blind, I couldn't tell him. The reason I tremble is, how did God allow this? Ein dover nister, from the eyes of Hashem. How did the Eibush allow the Bechayra to go from the older and be given to the younger? In other words, like this.
The Bechayra means the actual Bechayra?
No, the Bechayra means the Brocha.
Okay.
Did Yitzchak Bechlal know about that the firstborn hood had been sold years before? The firstborn hood being sold seems to be on the day they were 13 or 15 different opinions. The age of the Brochos, they're 63 years old. Yankov and Esav was 63. Yitzchak was 60 years old. They're 123 at the time of the story of the Brochos. 50 years have passed since the story of the lentil soup and the firstborn shaft. Did Yitzchak know about it?
Wasn't there a document? Later on, it talks about a document.
About the firstborn hood, there was a document about another sale that Esav sold his right to the Marsa Machpelah.
That's what Naphtali had to run back
exactly.
and
That
get
was that
from
document.
Mitzrayim.
Right. They probably wrote a document, though, for the firstborn shaft. Rashi and Chumash seems to learn. Yitzchak had no idea. The Rashi we saw in number 3 says Yitzchak only got wind of it now. It took 50 years till Esav actually spilled the beans. And by the way, it's 50 years that Yankov's already the firstborn. So the Chizkuni L'cher is going with that as well, that Yitzchak had no idea, and Yitzchak was saying the fact that the Brochos went to Yankov, these Brochos belonged to the firstborn. How could the Eibush have allowed that? He was wondering on how the Eibush allowed it. On himself, he felt no guilt. He felt he had done nothing wrong. He's a blind man. He's honest. Look in the Chizkuni in number 10, the last Chizkuni. But then he says, Gam Baruch Yeh, let Yankov be benched. Why? Shal pi hadibur beirachtiv. It was al pi God that I benched him. Sharikanu hu ha-b'cher michol, like Rashi says. Now that Yitzchak finds out Yankov acquired the firstbornhood, Shudas Adin Asisi, it was perfect. It's the way it's supposed to be. Yitzchak was calm. He understood why the Eibishter orchestrated this way. Dover another pshat, he says like this. When Yitzchak said Gam Baruch Yeh, he says, Lefisha Kvara Marta, I already told him, or those are cursed will be cursed. If I curse him, I'll curse myself. Ulekach, and therefore, I'm going to curse him. Similar to the Medrash Rabbah we just saw, right? Yeah. By the way, the Chizkuni never quotes any names. He says, I don't want to quote any names, any sources. I want to give you the information, and you judge it. You should judge the information for what it is.
Who was it, Chizkuni? We
barely know him. He was in the 1200s in France. Otherwise, we know nothing. The im toimer. So wait a second. Let Yitzchak just zip it. I won't curse him. I won't bench him. If Yitzchak really was upset at Yankov, So he doesn't want to curse him because then it'll bounce back at him. Okay, so just zip it. He says, no. Because I already said, Mavarachecha Baruch, I told Yankov, whoever benches you will be benched. So I need to bench Yankov. It's for my own well-being. Lekachani Mavarch. See, this it doesn't say in the Medrash. The more I bench Yankov, the better, because the more I bench him, the more it's going to bounce back at me. Ani Mavarch Atzmi. And then he says, Dover Acher, what's Gam Baruch Yi? He should be benched. That from the mouth of one day he's going to be benched from the mouth of the Eibishter. It was a prophecy. The last pshat to the Chizkuni is Yitzchak's giving a prophecy that one day Yankov will be benched. Later on, in the Eibishter benches him in base kale, he benches him fine. So the Chizkuni mentions, the Medrash Rabbah mentions, Yitzchak seems to have mixed feelings about this whole story. Turn to the next page, go to number 17. And then we're going to get to the big kasha. Number 17. Number 17 is another statement from the Medrash Rabbah. I'm sorry it's all in bits and pieces, but that's the only way to really put together the puzzles by all these different pieces. It's a Medrash Rabbah number 17. This is actually the basis for what Rashi writes in number 2. But in Medrash Rabbah it says the following. Amar Rabba Levi. Lefi shoya avinu Yitzchak mispached v'omer. Yitzchak was afraid, and he said, when Yitzchak first realized, when Esav walks in, he's like, oh my gosh, what happened? He said, Toyma, you're going to say, Allah Yitzchak, I didn't do what's right. I made the non-Bechor the firstborn. I made Yankov, I gave him the Brochos that should go to the firstborn. I messed up big time. Kivin Sha'amar, so when Esav spilled the bean that Yankov took my firstborn, he said, Yos Beirakti, good, I did the right thing. And that's what Rashi quotes. In other words, when Yitzchak realized that Yankov was Taka the firstborn, he had boarded. So Adrab, I did the right thing. That's Rab Levi. Rabbi Lozer says, Ein kiyum aget ela b'chesamov. A get is proven to be true by the signatures. A woman comes to Bezdin with the get. Maybe she forged the get. You look at the witnesses at the bottom. They're testifying the get's a real get. So now maybe she forged the signatures, so then we have to verify the signatures are perfect signatures, and that's the most we can do. And that proves that the get is real. So what does that have to do with this? Shaloi toima, you shouldn't say, Ilule, if not for the fact that Yankov tricked his father, he wouldn't have gotten the brachas. That's why it says, Gam Baruch Yiyeh, he should be benched. Rashi quotes this in number 2 and number 3. In Medrash Rabbah, it's two opinions. It's two opinions. Right. To me, it's not the same thing. Go back to number 2 and number 3. Rashi quotes both of them. Number 2 is the second word, that Gam Baruch Yiyeh was the bracha that he gave. Number 3, Rashi is quoting from the Tanchuma, but it's basically the shit of Rab Levi. That one Yitzchak found out that Yankov was the Bechor is good. To me, there's a big difference though. Yitzchak gave the beautiful brachas v'yitin l'chol helakim from the fat of the heavens, the dew of the land, the fat of the heavens, etc. He was under the impression that who's in front of him? Esav. That's the impression he was under. Esav comes in, he realized it was Yankov. So then Yitzchak says, Gam Baruch Yiyeh. When he said those words, he knew he was talking about Yankov. He was very well aware. He knew exactly what he was doing. That was a bracha. But what happened to the first thing, the big v'yitin l'cha? That was done under false pretenses. Did that work or not? Did that work, or did only the Gam Baruch Yiyeh work? So in the Medrash Rabbah number 17, l'cher simply you would say that's the debate. Rab Levi says that Yitzchak was afraid that he had messed up the whole order. When he found out that Yankov is the firstborn, so it's almost like Yitzchak was saying, so then the V'yitin L'cha actually took effect. Because I had in mind that I was benching the firstborn. Why did I want Esav? Because I wanted the firstborn. I had the firstborn. So the V'yitin L'cha is good. According to Rabbi Elazar, it could be Nishtazai. It could be Yitzchak's like, that taka didn't work. I had the wrong person in mind. But I'm giving a new bracha. Gam Baruch Yiyeh. Gam Baruch Yiyeh. But that would be very strange. You know why? Because Esav cries and he says, Tata, Tata, give me something. What does Yitzchak say? Nothing left.
Yeah.
If all there is Gam Baruch Yiyah, it's a very generic, general bracha. It must be Vit Lecha is still available. It's just still binding with Yankov. The fact that when Esav says, give me something, Yitzchak says, there's nothing left.
Yeah, that means V'yitin Lecha is not out there, it's given to Yaakov.
It means that V'yitin Lecha exactly is precise and it's binding on Yaakov.
Or that Yitzchak realizes what's going on and he doesn't want to give it to Esav.
Now he seems to say that already it's too late. Gevir son, I made Yankov the Gevir, the leader. By the way, there's a major discussion. In the beginning of the parsha, Rivkah goes to Shem and asks Shem, what's going on with me? Why in my stomach I have?
Yeah.
But what was her pella? What was her pella?
Church and the show.
Avram had the Yishmael. So she knew that Yitzchak might have a kid.
Person,
She said, "Lama zeh anochi." The Charedim says she said Avram Taka had two diametrically opposite kids, but they're different mothers. Lama zeh anochi, but it's all me. How could it be? So Shem told her that the Esav inside of you has major potential to be a great person. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be like Yishmael, even though Yishmael himself did tshuva.
Mashiach comes, it's gonna.
But she went to Shem. Why didn't she go to her husband Yitzchak? Yitzchak's a Navi. Why didn't she go to Yitzchak? Some Farshim say she doesn't want to reveal to her husband that, I think there's something that she didn't want to tell him.
Yeah.
But we're not going to Avram. Her Shver Avram's still alive.
Same thing as Yitzchak, though.
Same, doesn't want to tell the Shver.
Yeah.
So she went to Shem. Okay? What does Shem tell her? By the pasuk says, "Vayomer Hashem lo." Hashem told her. In simple, it sounds like Rivkah herself was a prophet, and the Eibusha told her. Yet Rashi Dafka learns that she went to Shem's yeshiva. There's a whole discussion why. How do we know that? Maybe she was a prophet. Wasn't she a prophet? The Gemara counts 7 women that were prophetesses over time. The only one of the Moitza counts is Sarah. Yeah. Doesn't count Rivkah or Leah or Rachel.
Rivkah was a prophet. She knew from how she knew some of the stuff to tell Yaakov.
Right, she had Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is not the same as the Eibusha speaking to you.
Right.
Anyhow, so she went to Shem. What did Shem tell her? Rav Ya'avoid Tzoir. What do those words mean? The simple meaning is Rav, the older brother, will serve the younger one. Some Rishonim learn, no, it means Rav, the older one. Ya'avoid Tzoir. The younger one will serve the other one. The simple pshat is Rav, the older one will serve the younger. But if you put the comma after Rav, you can read it the other way around. V'Rav, and the older one, Ya'avoid Tzoir, the Tzoir will serve him. So there's 2 ways of reading that. And it gets all the more complicated. Now we don't know who's the older one because Yaakov buys the firstbornhood.
Anyway you cut it, Yaakov's okay.
Exactly.
Or he's not.
Or he's not, right?
No, so I think it's the Meshech Chochmer, Meir Simcha Dvinsk, who says that when Esav says, V'yakveni zeh pamayim, why is Esav bringing up the firstborn? When Esav's screaming here, he says, 50 years ago was the firstbornhood, and now it's the Brochos. Why is he bringing back all stories 50 years ago? No, because Esav was saying, wait a second. 50 years ago, Yaakov became the firstborn. And Shem said he learned the Pashtus way. V'Rav Yavet Sur, the older has to serve the younger. Well, 50 years ago, Yaakov became the older. So he has to serve me. So how could he get the bracha now, which says, have a gvir lachecha, you're going to be ruler over your brother? It's not adding up. If 50 years ago, Yaakov became the firstborn, he knew what he had to know. He knew what he had to know.
He knew how to fool his father.
Yeah.
So the question is, Bechlal, what was Yitzchak thinking? Shem already gave a prophecy that Rav Yaved Tzor. The simple reading is the older one will serve the younger. Yitzchak did not know about the firstbornhood 50 years ago that it was sold. So he thinks Esav is still the older. Shem said Esav has to serve Yaakov. How did Yitzchak plan on benching Esav and tell him the words Have a gvir la'achecha? That you should rule over Yaakov. What about Shem's? So this bothered me for a long time. So the Ramban Taka says Rivkah never told him. Rivkah never told him. He says, well, now why? Why didn't you tell him?
Clergy-client privilege.
You know, it's like she
Couldn't
came
tell
home
you.
from there, did not want to say. It was probably not the news that she wanted to hear. When she came home after Shem told her you're going to have a tzaddik and you're going to... When she walked past the yeshivas, Yankov was kicking to get out. Why was Yaakov kicking to get out? The Gemara says in Nidud that when you're a baby in utero, a malach comes, teaches the kid Torah. What? I mean, Shem was a big Rosh Hashiva, but what's wrong with the malach?
Could do mitzvahs and the Torah. With
Sas-
Tanya, we just learned about mitzvahs. And we
How
learned
many
about-
Shame.
shivas were there?
Hold on, Avram learned there. Yitzchak learned, and
learned
Yankov. All three
Yaakov
of them learned
learned
by
What
Shem.
they learn.
Shem.
Torah.
First of all, they
First of all,
learned.
there was Sefer Yitzir already, right? According to
Well,
some
Avram
other
wrote it.
Rishon wrote it.
Shem, they knew lots of Torah. Shem learned from his. They all learned from Chanoich. Chanoich spent most of his life in heaven. Chanoich revealed to them all the secrets of creation.
So it wasn't Torah. As we know.
No, there
No,
was
there
also
was,
Shabbat mitzvahs.
there was some idea. First of all,
Shabbat
Avodah
mitzvahs.
Zarah. The Avodah Zarah was huge. There was so much chokhmah, about the koiches of the Eibishter and
What did I just read? It said
omnipresence
Shishis in
and
the Mishnah.
dividing.
But they were
600
hundreds.
just on Avodah Zarah. Avram had, exactly. And he had a Sanhedrin that was busy judging that. But everything, they learned everything,
600 Siddur Mishnah.
They can't steal. So monetary law was huge. Shame was
Tort law.
All Baba Basra, Baba
Exactly.
Baba Metzia, Baba Kama.
that. And they were Nevi'im. They knew God. So there's so much to study. But Avram learned by Shem and Yitzchak and Yaakov. It's interesting. Shem was like, that's where everything comes from. He got his stuff, besides from being a prophet. He learned from his father, Noach. Noach learned from his Zayd, the Mesushelach. Mesushelach got it from his father, Chanoich. And Chanoich was Makabel straight from Adam.
Shem was like a rebbe.
Big Rebbe.
Hanoich.
Great-grandfather. Mesushelach was Noach's grandfather. Noach wouldn't have learned from Chanoich. Chanoich left the world early, relatively.
Yeah, he was
at
365.
365. Short life. But he said even while he was alive, he was most of the time in heaven. That's why the Abish said, you know what, come back to heaven once and for he took him with his body. Chanoich never died. He's one of the few that he went to heaven, right? But then the Abish made him into a malach matat. And then the Abish had to remove him from his body. And no. Fakir, Matat is a Shmoy Kashem Rabbi, the same Gematria. Anyhow, so why Taka was Yankov?
Not to be confused with another one that's Matat Beroin. That's another.
No, that's the guy. No, Matat.
that's-
Yeah, that's the guy.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we don't say the whole thing.
so he's a huge
So,
malach. He's like,
yeah, one of the biggest. So the Simcha Bunim of Pshischa, great Chassidic Rebbe said, why was it that Yankov was burning to come out when they went past the yeshiva of Shem? What's wrong with the malach in the stomach? So Simcha Bunim would say, yeshiva is not all about the Rosh Yeshiva. It's not all about the one giving the shir. It's who you're sitting next to, who your chaverim were. Esav was his chavrusa. He said, get me out of here,
that's great.
I asked my son, I asked him this question, why do you think Yankov was kicking to come out? So he said Yankov could learn in the stomach, but he wanted to teach others.
Huh?
In order to teach, you had to get out of there.
Lubavitcher.
Yeah. So, Esav couldn't teach Esav.
Yeah, that's the real Mitzvah.
So the Ramban Taka says that Rivkah never told Yankov about what Shem said, because otherwise the whole thing is inconsistent. It's fascinating. It's fascinating stuff. Okay. So the shaila that we want to deal with is l'chayra. How were the brachos effective? Imagine the scene. Yitzchak is sitting there, can't see. There's someone in front of him. The simple reading of the psukim is he's not sure, but then the hands, the goat hairs, convince him it's Esav. He benches him.
He's still not convinced. Yaakov
It's,
named
okay, no, but then it says v'lo yikiroi. It seems like he was. It seems like he decided. We said it because the kol Yankov wasn't the actual voice; it was the tone, the words Yankov said, and it could be that Esav was dafka speaking that way to get his father's rotzen, to get in his father's good side, to get the best bracha possible. All of a sudden, Esav comes in. By the way, it says in Medrash that Yankov hadn't left the room yet. He was hiding.
Right, it was
Esav
just
came in.
leaving as he
Yankov was
walking.
hiding behind the door. Esav walked in, and then Yankov was able to creep out, tiptoed out. But it was mamish, and we'll see why it had to be so precise. But simply, wait a second. Yitzchak thinks it's Esav. Then Esav comes in the room. Yitzchak trembles. Means the carpet was pulled out from underneath him. He was caught by surprise. L'chayr, the brachos shouldn't have taken effect. If you think you're benching someone, and you think they're in front of you, and it turns out it's somebody else, the brachos shouldn't take any effect.
Why not, by the way? Why not?
You think it's your son in front of you, you're benching him, it turns out it's the neighbor from across the
Words.
road.
Benching is the word. It's the
You're
intention.
benching a person. You're benching their neshama. The kavana. Hold on, I'll bring you a right. Okay, hold on. So who's the first one to ask this kasha? In other words, there's Bechlal Shaila. What was Yitzchak's take on it? We saw it's not so clear. We saw the Eibishter made miracles, that Esav should stumble, should take time. Yitzchak wanted to curse him, and in the end Yitzchak benches him. But that's a halbatzar. The shaila is, did the brachas b'chlal take effect? Who's the first one to ask this question? The Ran. There's a sefer called Rosh's Haran, Rabbeinu Nissim. It's a sefer on Jewish thought. It's a number of drushes, not that many, but they're long essays, fascinating on principles of Yiddishkeit and Torah. Who wrote it? Someone by the name of Rabbeinu Nissim. Amongst the Rishonim, there's a famous fellow called Rabbeinu Nissim of Gerona, who lived in Gerona and Barcelona, the famous Ran. He was towards the end of the Rishonim. He dies in the 1370s. An old man, he was almost 90 years old, and he wrote a very important commentary on Gemara, on the Rif, and he was, the greatest of the great in his time. 2 generations before him, or a generation before, the Ramban also had a student by the name Rabbeinu Nissim. This book called Rosh's Haran, which Ran wrote it? The Ramban student or the famous Ran? It was unclear and debated upon for generations. People going back and forth. And
How far along?
as of today,
How far apart are they?
2 generations.
1 generation, 2 generations, decades, not that long.
That language changed. and
Right.
terminology
No, and they both
changed.
would have been in Spain. And so the consensus today was written by the famous Ran, the second one. A number of
Back of the
reasons.
Gemara?
What? The guy in the back of the Gemara, right. One reason is because whenever he quotes the Ramban in his say, first of all, he often argues on the Ramban. If he was a student, he wouldn't be so quick to argue on his Rebbe. Yeah. In addition, apparently the Ramban student, Rabbeinu Nissim, died before the Ramban did. The problem is in this sefer, when it quotes the Ramban, it says Zechrono Livrocha. The question is maybe that was added in a later manuscript. You have no idea. These things were copied so many times. So that proof is lav davka. But one of the big rayas is that the famous Ran, the second one, he dies in the 1370s. He had a student called Reb Chistoi Kraskas, a major thinker, philosopher, anti-Moreh Nevuchim, anti-Aristotle, but he was not a Kabbalist, he was a philosopher. So he was intriguing. And actually, in 1391, there were horrible massacres in Spain, pogroms, and many Yidden fled. Many were forced into Christianity. It was horrible. Reb Chistoi Kraskas. He wrote a sefer Ur Hashem, and he was the leader of the Jews at that time. In his sefer Ur Hashem, he quotes shtiklach verbatim from the sefer Rosh's Haran. Now, he was a student of the second Ran, so that kind of makes sense that it was the second Ran that wrote the drushes. By this Reb Chistoi Kraskas, so he was a major philosopher, but he was very much in the Jewish box. There's actually a story that in one of the cities in Spain where he lived, there was no rain, a horrible drought, serious, to the point that the Goyim expelled all the Jews from the city until you guys arranged some rain. So the Jews gathered outside. They had a rally, a demonstration. But in this demonstration, they had a rabbi speaking. I don't know why in Washington, some Jewish leader should have spoken and said a couple words or something. If it was a religious gathering, there should have been someone.
It wasn't religious.
It wasn't religious. So why did it?
Matizyahu came and said Shema Yisrael.
I'm saying, the Litvish Rabbonim in Lakewood came out against it. The Babich Rabbanim were pro, but it wasn't a religious. There's nothing religious about it.
It was Achdus, though. You know how many tefillin they put on?
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So what are the
Just-
girls? Why are all the girls going for? I had lots of students of mine from 12th grade went.
Why did they not give out? Did they not give out neshek? Whose fault is that? The teachers and the students who went. The boys came with their tefillin. Why didn't the girl teachers send them with their neshek?
We don't. It was never a Lubavitch thing to join every rally. You had Bachman would go a little here, a little there from his son, but officially to take off and cancel school and go. They have school. They're busy. They're busy. They go cross country for
Cross country, you can do. You know how much Mitzrayim you can do.
Yeah. All right.
And this was an Ace Ratzim for Achdus.
What did the Rebbe say to the Bach that wanted to get his license to go on Mitzrayim? Don't mix your titles in my Mitzrayim.
No, but here he's saying the whole trip can be
Whole
focused
trip
on.
Was it though?
Yeah.
It could
You
have
know
been.
much
It
Mitzrayim,
could
you know
have
how many
been.
buck tefillin they did? Tens of thousands of tefillin were put on.
Hundreds of thousands.
No, tens of. I don't know about
Yeah,
hundreds of
yeah.
thousands.
No,
Tens of
and-
thousands of tefillin.
And
were
those that did it,
Tens of
gam bruchim yiyu. It's a big schus. It's a big
Tens of
schus.
thousands of people gathered.
Yeah, tens of thousands together.
No,
We had
the
tens of
Rabbanim
thousands.
of Crown Knights were saying to go as an Indian, just to go show
Because
support.
it's Achdus. It's Achdus.
None of the other Chassidim.
None of the other cities.
We know even the Babish doesn't usually do such
they don't
things.
do Mitzrayim either.
No, that okay. So Mitzrayim aside.
No, I'm
Anyhow,
saying, but
fine,
they don't
fine.
do
Rosh
We have a Rosh.
Fine. Anyhow, how did that? I just
Yeah,
have to
but
get it off my
where-
chest. It had nothing to do with anything.
No,
Anyhow.
yeah, you were connected.
Oh. So the Bechistoi Kneskes.
No one, the Yamaka got up and
No, there was one capital till him. Yeah, that's right. People that were there. Yeah, I'm not. If it,
Atas Yao said Shema.
And
some Jewish
Sharibo.
leader should have spoken at least for a moment, say epis
Dvar
was
Torah.
about Eibishter,
Yeah.
Hashem Yerachem,
Yeah.
something epis
Yeah.
was. It wasn't.
It wasn't. Yeah.
They had music. They had a whole concert going on over there.
Yeah.
They had Jewish singers going on over there.
He did.
Yeah, and I heard there were some women singing too, whatever, not Negeya. But there was time. They could have taken 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be the rabbi with a long beard. It could have been a modern, but somebody who's
Said
speaking on
stuff
behalf
about-
of
the, the priest said stuff about Hashem. He said,
Oh,
"Oh, you kidding me? These are God's
He
people."
said more about
There was a
the.
priest and there wasn't a rabbi.
He said, "The whole Dvar Torah. You're God's
Yeah,
people."
there you see. That's where it's.
Did he bring the Ran?
I wouldn't have been surprised.
You should.
It was very not.
You should know
religious.
there are the Abar Benel sometimes quotes from Galochim and priests in his sefer.
Well, he quoted from the Bible. This priest was quoting from the Torah.
What kind of stuff does he quote from priests?
Pshatim, like in what words mean or this or that. Yeah,
Really?
I'll tell you. I once met a Christian guy, and he told me mostly. We began discuss. It was years ago. We began discussing a pasuk in Yirmiyah when the Yidden went to Bavel for 70 years. Yirmiyah said, "Plant vineyards, build homes." The simple pshat is Yirmiyah says, "Go to Bavel. You're not coming back tomorrow. Go settle down, build homes, get settled." So this guy says he thinks pshat is like this: Yidden just saw horrible massacres. Jewish blood is everywhere. Now they're exiled from their homeland. It's only going to get worse. So Yirmiyah says, "No, don't worry. You're going to Bavel, but you're going to build homes there. You're going to have vineyards. God's going to take care of you in your land of exile." It was a comfort. That's how he.
Yeah.
So sometimes Goyim can have a nice dreidel on
Galach
the.
said that?
He was a well-versed Christian. It was a. Yeah. Anyhow,
Probably took it from him.
so you're probably sure.
But
So
that's what happened.
yeah.
You know, 'cause
But
you don't print the vineyard if you're still a slave, and if you're in chains.
great way to live.
Yeah, right,
the
right,
opposite
right.
of that.
So the Chistoi Kreskas, so this, what happened was this was in the end of the 1300s in Spain. Again, the Jews were banished from the city. They held a rally. He got up and he was invited. That's right. He was invited to speak. The rabbi spoke. He quoted a pasuk in this week's parsha, I think, about the wells of Yitzchak, about the water, about Lonu Hamayin, that the water is ours. From this week's parsha, boom, the heaven was full with gray clouds started pouring. Anyhow, a fascinating fellow. So, in Droshos Haran, which we're, as of today, is assumed it's from the famous Rabbeinu Nissim. In the 5th Rosh, he asks like this: Yitzchak's Brochos to Yaakov should have been completely null and void. Why? because there's a din in the laws of Nedarim. A father can annul the Nedarim of his wife or his daughter. Okay? Imagine. Oh, we're going to finish up. So imagine that the father sitting in Chvei, sitting and learning, and he hears a female voice making a neder, and he annuls it. He thinks it's his wife. Lo and behold, it was his daughter. So his daughter made the neder and he annulled it, but he had someone else in mind. It's ineffective. It's ineffective. So why by the Brochos would it be different? That's the shaila that the Ran asks. And I didn't have it in Rosh Hashanah, but Abar Benel in number 12, Hashayla Havav, he asked this question. Echosh for Rivkah, how did Rivkah think? So Abar Benel is already later. He passes away in 1508. So he's already from the early Achronim. How did Rivkah think that the brachos that Yitzchak would give Yankov? B'choshvay, thinking that it's Esav, Yoilu would work for Yankov? It wouldn't work. Since his kavanah is to bench Esav and not Yankov, everything follows the kavanah. And the Abar Benel Mamish quotes the same raya from the Dorim. V'razal Amru, we're in the third line in number 12. Le'inyan nodra ishtoi. If his wife made the neder, he thinks it's his daughter. Or vice versa, nodra bitoi, the daughter made and he thinks it's his wife. He has to redo it afterwards. It doesn't count. If you told something to somebody, thinking it was somebody else, doesn't work. If you benched a random person because you thought it was your son, it turned out it's a random, not effective.
Maybe he thought that the bracha was for the b'chor. Whoever the b'chor is.
So that's what in the medrash that we saw. You can kind of say that when Rab Levi says that when Yitzchak realized that Yankov was really the b'chor, he was comforted. Yeah. That's if Yitzchak was only thinking firstborn. He loved Esav. He was thinking about Esav. If it was only firstborn, then you could say, well, it was only firstborn, and later on it turns out Yankov fit the bill. But it was Esav l'chera. So he says, how could the tzaddikus, Rivkah and Yaakov think this? That the brachas which are intended for Esav will help for Yaakov. Fine. Then he says, Shaila Hazayin, the Bible asks a seventh question. Why did Hashem want that this should happen? That Yitzchak should give the brachas in a mistaken fashion? Wouldn't it be better for Hashem to tell Yitzchak, send Esav out of the house, Yankov's your real kid, just like Hashem did to Avram about Yishmael? Why didn't Hashem do the same thing to Yitzchak? Reveal to him the truth. And then Yitzchak, with the mitzvah of Hashem, will bench Yankov with no trickery and everything will be straightforward and glad. So look at number 13 on the side. The Abar Benel answers. And this is the same answer as the Ran. So it's the same thing. He says like this, you have to know, you know what Rivkah was thinking? Like the truth. Ein hanavi poyel nuvuasai. It's not the prophet that creates anything. A prophet's just a pipeline. He's a kli to the bracha alone. Like Mara has chuchis, like a glass that will shine according to the amount of light that comes from heaven. It's not the glass which is creating light, it's just reflecting. Like it says in Shmuel, Ruach Hashem Diberbi, the Eibish's Spirit speaks through me, His words are on my tongue. Even the words are placed on my tongue through prophecy. I have no Bechira, it's not the Navi at all. So the vort of the Ran and the Abar Benel is not Yitzchak who's giving the brachas. It's the Eibishter. Who cares that Yitzchak was...
You're a conduit.
Right, who cares that he was unawares? Yitzchak and his brachas, the brachas are not his, they're from God. What? Right, it's like Birchas Kainim, right? Yeah. The Kainim are the pipeline, okay? V'hu Yisader. You see, someone, when Benny maybe gets up there, we can think he's the one giving us the brachas. But sometimes you have a kohen that gets up there and you wonder, what credentials does he have to be blessing me? And we say, listen, he's the pipeline. The brachas coming from the Eibishter. By many ministers, maybe it's coming from him. But v'hu Yisader, the Eibishter places the words in the mouth of the prophet to bench Yankov. The Yeinyan Bazeh, it's like nature. He says like this: if you are planting and you want to plant wheat, By mistake, you have a barley seed. What's going to come out? Barley. It's barley. I had in mind
Great
wheat.
analogy.
Ain't suffolk that the earth will give out barley and not wheat. Because it's not about you. It's about the seed. You're just a tool. So he says, when it comes to Nedorim, it's taka different. When the father,
Because then intent matters. It's a whole different
when
thing.
the father, when you're annulling the neder, you are doing it. It's not God, it's you.
Yeah.
You're not a kli. But by Brochos, it's the Eibush. He says, since Yitzchak and needs Brochos only a vessel.
How does it answer the Shiloh Zion?
So therefore, Rivkah realized it's okay for Yitzchak to be under a false premonition. It's not about him. It's not about him. So this is the answer of the Abarbanel and the answer of the Ran. And he says this answers question number 7, the Abarbanel and the Ran both answer that Yitzchak loved Esav. Now Avram loved Yishmael, but apparently the love that Yitzchak had to Esav was so strong the Abraham didn't want to break it because Yitzchak would become depressed.
Yeah, you don't want to make him
You
feel
can't
bad.
bench. You can't bench someone if you're depressed. You have to be besimcha. So the Abarban and the Ran say the only way that Yitzchak would be be'emes besimcha would be to think he's benching Esav. If he would be privy to the truth that Esav's a Rush and he's benching, he would be a broken man. He loved Yaakov too, obviously, but that would have broken him. His greatest hope in life was to have nachas from Esav. When he was benching, for him to know that he's benching Esav and this bracha itself might be the turnaround, that would be the greatest pleasure for him.
He's a well digger.
Exactly. And because that's the greatest pleasure, that's the greatest brachas. It's the only way. It's amazing. The only way Yitzchak could be in the proper mood to give a bracha is if it's Esav. It's if he thinks that Esav's in front of him. So it had to be Yankov. It had to be no other way. Yankov had to be in the guise of Esav.
Yeah, that's great.
Now, how it took effect, that was the Shiloh number 6, the answer that comes from God. Why the Eibishter made it that way, there was no other way. Fascinating. Right. So that's what the Ran and that's what the Abarbanel say. Now, I will tell you, they seem to be learning that Yitzchak was mamish fooled. In fact, look at number 15. The Sforno says clearly, and then I'll tell you the Rogachov and we're done. The Sforno says in number 15, it says Vayevarcheyu. It says Yitzchak, are you Esav? He says yes. It says Vayevarcheyu. Before Vayitan Lecha, it says he gave him some other bracha, without any details. Says the Sforno, fascinating. Al shechoshtoi shoyroya leklala. Yitzchak originally suspected this is Yaakov, and Yitzchak thought this guy deserved to be cursed. But then Yitzchak touches his hands. He's convinced it's really Esav. So Yitzchak's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were Yaakov fooling me. I was about to curse you. I owe you a bracha for that." V'chein or muzal hachoyshe deschavim. If you suspect somebody in something that's not true, you have to appease them. Not you have to bench them. Like Eli thought that Chana, Shmuel's mother, was shikr right after in Rosh Hashanah. Exactly. So instead, Eli benched her. So what's this further saying though? He's learning clearly. Originally, Yitzchak wasn't sure. He thought maybe it's Yankov fooling me, or I'm going to curse him. Then he feels his hand. No, it's for sure Esav. And he said, I'm so sorry for thinking you're Yankov. He gave me extra bracha. So he definitely thought it was Esav.
That could be why he had nothing left. Because if he would have just thought it was Esav, he had something for Esav for Yaakov. He could have said, I'll give you Yaakov's brachas. But when Esav came in, he said, I have nothing left. What do you mean? He didn't intend to give Yaakov a little something? He gave both to Esav on the spot.
Okay, good.
Both, yeah.
So here comes... Hold on. I want to say a couple things. I want to tell you the Malbim and the Rogachov. I'll do it quickly. The Malbim says...
Who's the Malbim again?
He lived about 150 years ago. Very important commentary on Tanakh. He learned Kabbalah. He wanted to learn Chassidus by the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe Marash gave him a cold shoulder. But he was definitely a great man in learning. And
was that the one he said your space is supposed to be in there was some other person that wanted to learn Chassidus?
That was the Alshich and the Arizal. Yeah. So let's do this over here. Yeah. So the Malbim says, wait a second. He says, the Medrash says Yankov was still in the room as Esav came in. It was mamash. He said the timing was perfect. Why? Had Esav come in a moment earlier, Esav would have spoiled the whole plot. If he would have come in a moment later, the Brochos wouldn't have worked, because they would have been done under false pretenses, and that's it. But because Esav came in while the discussion was kind of still going, it's called Toich Kedei Dibur. It was within 3 seconds of saying something, it's considered that you're still in the middle of that sentence. You could add conditions, you could change what you said. It's only set in stone if 3 seconds of silence follows your statement. Kalakadosh, right. Once you've done it or you've said it and 3 seconds elapsed, that's the amount of time, then it's happened. So says the Malbim like this: had Esav come in an hour later, then Yitzchak's brachos would have just been null and void. He gave them to Yaakov thinking his Esav would have been, the whole thing would have flopped. But because Esav came in right away, it was still, and Yitzchak right away realizes, hey, wait, that was Yaakov. When he says Gam Baruch Yiyeh, is considered a continuation of the V'yitin L'cha he said before. So that's why it's considered in the same discussion. So he's able to redirect, because it's all the same sentence. So Taka, when he said Yitin L'cha, would is null and void. But before the story really ended, he redirected it to Yaakov. That's fine. You can always add conditions or add more details when you're in the middle of speaking. That's how the Malbim learns. Right. Comes to the Rogachover in number 19 and says that everybody got it wrong. He says he's incredible like this. He says Yitzchak wasn't fooled. 100. Yitzchak was 50-50. He really didn't know. He didn't know. He didn't know. And yet he benched him.
He knew there was a possibility that it was mentioned.
The Rogachover says, if you are unsure about A or B, if the reality is A or the reality is B, and you still go ahead and do the action, it's as if you have in mind, I want it to work whether A is true or B is true. Yeah. If you're aware A or B and you still go ahead and do it, why didn't you refrain until you find out? If you still do it, it means you're okay with it being either way, and it works either way. And he proves it from 3 Gemaras. Look what he says in number 19. Ha'atazeh. Because he says, Yitzchak keeps on asking Yaakov, are you Esav, are you Esav? Why does the Torah record that whole, why does the Torah record 10 psukim of, you should know, the plot almost fell through, you should know, it almost fell through. You know, it's exciting, right? But why is that important? It's crucial, says the Rogachover, because that shows Yitzchak wasn't fully sure either way. That's why the brachas worked. And he says like this: HaPasuk marbe. The pasuk is adding so many details that the plot almost fell through. You know, it's very exciting. Why is that crucial? To tell you that Yitzchak was mesupik imze Esav. He wasn't sure. The Torah wants to say, so Yitzchak was still thought. He kept on asking. He wasn't fully sure till the very end. He wasn't sure. And yet he still went ahead. And therefore it's not a toss, but it's not a mistake. With that he refers to the whole Shah of the Ran, the Barbanel. Why wasn't it a mistake? The Rogachover says because he wasn't, if he Taka believed it was Esav, would have been a way. Because he wasn't sure. In other words, like this: if Yaakov and Rivkah really would have fooled Yitzchak, the brachas wouldn't have worked. They would have been a mistake. False pretenses. But because Yitzchak wasn't doped, because he actually was, wait a second, this might be Yaakov, and he nevertheless went ahead, that's why the brach, but look, the rayas he brings are incredible rayas. Baba Basra daf kuf mem beis nedorim peizayin Christus daf chavdalit. I'll tell you them. I'll do first nedorim daf peizayin. I have it in number 18, but I'll just tell you outside. It's very simple. God forbid you have a guy, his name is Reuven. They tell Reuven, your father passed away. He tears Kriya. Sorry it was your son. The Kriya doesn't work. He had the wrong person in mind. But what if they told Reuven, they say, Reuven, he passed. He thinks it's his father. His father's been in the hospital for years. But he's not sure. They didn't tell him. He thinks it's his father. He doesn't know for sure. He tears Kriya. Then they tell him, by the way, it was your son. Then the Kriya works.
Because he was in...
Why? Because since he wasn't sure exactly who it was, it probably his father, it might be somebody else, and then he goes ahead with the Kriya. It's as if the Kriya is done, whether it's A, whether it's B. If they told him it's his father, so he tears al das, and it's his father, so then it doesn't work. It has to be for the right person. But if he wasn't sure and he did it anyways, then he covers both bases.
But his
That's
B
what the
is
Gemara
still,
says.
Still a suffix.
Doesn't matter, but he covers both bases. So that's mamish like over here. Because Yitzchak, it's amazing. Had Yaakov and Rivkah mamish fooled Yitzchak about Yaakov's identity, the whole thing would have fallen apart. Another raya, beautiful. Baba Basra Kuf Mem Beis. The story there is about the Gemara discusses if a baby in utero actually inherits or only once the baby is born. It says there a story. There was a ger. A ger died. He left lots of assets. So the whole community came running. It's all hefker, right? The ger died. People came running. People took this. People took that. Everything was taken. Then news comes out. By the way, this ger has a wife who has a baby who's expecting. So they all put their money back. Then, God forbid, there's a miscarriage. So the Brisa says that people can come again, and the second time round, whatever people collect is theirs. So the Gemara says, wait a second. If the baby in utero doesn't inherit anything, right? So this whole thing was a mistake. When the first time round people came and collected their stuff, they acquired it. They put it back thinking, well, the wife's expecting she might give birth. But if the baby actually doesn't inherit and then there's a miscarriage, so all the items should be redistributed to those who had acquired it. But yet it's not like that. There's a new, whoever comes gets it. So the Gemara says, Rava says, you know why? Because even the first time round, when they went and grabbed, they knew the ger had a wife. They knew that she might be expecting. So therefore, when they grabbed it, it wasn't with 100% certainty. So what do you see from there? When you're not sure, so here's a little bit of a different thing, but the Brochos says a similar idea. When you're not sure and you do an action, the action is very much linked to your thought. It's very much linked to the maybe yeah, maybe no in your mind. And therefore the action wasn't done with enough certainty to be considered an acquisition.
Yeah, but it's a reverse, but it's the same idea.
Same idea. And what's his raya from Krisis, Daf Chav Daled? He says in Krisis, Daf Chav Daled, that someone's not sure if they did an Avera that carries chorus. There was a piece of meat in front of you. You ate it. Then you find out it may have been chaylev, which carries chorus. So even if it was accidental, but it may have been. So you bring an Asham Tolui. What if they're about to bring it to the base of Mikdash, you're about to shecht it, and all of a sudden you find out where either the thing was chaylev, so you bring a chatos, or it wasn't, it was okay. What happens to the animal?
Yeah, can you switch those off?
So Rab Meir says that the animal is no longer holy.
At all?
At all.
Even though you already want to
Yeah.
When you
'cause
brought it originally, it was a suffix.
They switch it.
It's an Asham Tali.
So the Chachamim, the Chachamim say no, the animal is still holy. Because when you brought it, you knew that you may not have sinned. You knew it could be it was, could be it wasn't, and I'm making it holy. So since you knew maybe A, maybe B, you did it anyways, so then it's holy in any event. So says the Rogatshov, or similar over here. Because Yitzchak remained uncertain till the end, so the Rogatshov is arguing on everybody we saw until now. He says that Fakir, the fact that the Torah records all of Yitzchak's questions is to show that Yitzchak at the end wasn't sure. And yet he went through with it. That's the reason and the only reason why the brachas actually work. Because since he wasn't sure, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Okay, either way.
Exactly. In other words, had he Taka been completely fooled that it's Esav, the whole story would have backfired.
I think Esav, according to the Rogatchover, I'm telling you, Yitzchak was going with Hashgacha Pratis. He's like, look, Hashem's sending them in, I'm good either way. If it's Taka Yaakov, it was meant to be. If it was Esav, it has to be from what the Rogatchover is saying. That's the underlying thought process in his head. But according to all these questions, how could Yaakov have married his first sister, Leah, when his intention was to marry Rachel? Why wasn't, according to all the questions about that you had the false pretenses?
So there's a Marsha. The Marsha says that Yaakov knew Lavan may have fooled around with him. And when Yaakov under the chuppah was Makadosh Tekala, he had in mind maybe either way. There's a Marsha who says that. Yeah.
That would be similar to
because
this.
the whole Shaila, because Reuven was born from the first drop of Zerah from Yaakov.
Right.
The problem is, the Gemara says in Nida that if someone's born from a union when the husband thought the woman was somebody, mixed up the wives, it can have a negative impact on the kid. How could it be that Reuven was born? It's called Ben Hatmura, when there's an exchange of the wives. If Yaakov thought he was with Rachel and really with Leah, then, how could they have orchestrated that? It would affect Reuven. So the Maharsha says that Yaakov knew that it might be
He
Leah.
might, but then he gave Rachel a sign. The sign
That
was
was
stolen. So
right. So he knew it. That
he knew it was a
could still be.
possibility.
So therefore, he had it al das. Or do that, I'm going ahead with it.
Right.
The same idea, though. The same
idea.
idea.
Spectacular.
Exactly.
Ah, the Ragazov.
All right.
That's Shekaya.
Yeah. See, he has a.